Well, as I said, I wasn't aware of this until I arrived here on Sunday and was shown the programme. But I got it off the top of me nut. As you know, whatever action you're in anywhere, you've no doubt had an overall briefing, but specifically you are only aware of your particular area. You're aware you've got some idea of what's going on around you, but as far as you're there, and that's all your area is just there. Now, to put you in the picture of Dieppe and the role of the Royal Marine Commando. The Royal Marine Commando was formed in February 42. That was the foundation day. Actually, Valentine's Day, February 42. Logically, of course, commando, of course, is a word that refers to the man and to the unit. And I expect you all know that it derives from the Boers in the Boer War. The Boers were numerically no way to match the British forces, but they were excellent plainsmen in the field and horsemen. And a commando was a group of anything from 20 to 40 mounted Boers, and that was a commando. And it also now arrives to the individual. But the Royal Marine Commando was formed, I say, February 42 was the formation date. Prior to that, all commandos have been from the army regiments, because the corps was a very small corps, really, peacetime 30,000, and spread basically, or principally, on the fleet. But with the onset of the Second World War, the intake of, I hate the word conscripts, HOs, hostilities only, increased the numbers of the corps, and by 42 it became numerically possible for the Royal Marines to take up their natural role of commandos. Go way back, you know, the initial Second World War commandos, a completely different type of unit to today's. I mean, Second World War commandos were the original concept of commandos: in, bang, bang, and out. But nowadays, of course, they're more like troops of the line. Well, the Royal Marine Commando was formed, as I say then, and the first action was Dieppe. I expect you all heard Dieppe, a French port. At that time, it was all under German control. And the operation was originally scheduled to take place in beginning of June, end of June, beginning of July. It's codenamed Operation Rutter. And about the middle of June, the commando, we were based on the Isle of Wight, and the commando was called into concentration. And when that happens, you know there's something afoot, something's going to happen. And we had all conjecture, what's the unit, what are we going to do? And each morning a group would go off down to Ryde, go on board the HMS Lotus, and they were the special groups that were, one guy in particular was the chap who was going to blow us up. Anyway, that fell through, that operation fell through, and the unit was then dismissed, back again to... Now you can imagine, we've been in concentration for over a week. Some part of the commando have been each day going off and getting a briefing, or an outline briefing, and then suddenly that's all off and you're back. Obviously, word gets out. It's bound to get out, no matter how tight your security is. And the Isle of Wight, the island at the time was riddled with German spies and that sort of thing. Word got out that. However, off we went on leave. That's fine. Came back again after a fortnight's leave, and back in the old routine, all the exercises. I always remember one of the exercises, you can see, was go across it, land in Portsmouth dockyard, and there you are, crawling around, hiding behind things, showing off banks, and attacking buildings, and the old dockyard maters are wandering around, and what's this staff lot doing? But it became apparent after why we were doing that. And then we were told there was going to be a big exercise. The commando was to act as an invading force, go over to the mainland, and the Fifth Army were over there, and they were going to, they got to chase us down. That sounded good, and this is going to be a real exercise, this. Going to use some live ammunition, well, that's odd. However, off we went with the 18th of August. Lovely afternoon. Half of the commando went on to HMS Locust, an old Chinese station gunboat pre-war, and the other half, X and B Company on French chasseurs. Now that the chasseurs were part of the Free French Navy. Chasseur, halfway between a motor gunboat and a frigate. Very, very fast, lightly armed, sort of torpedo gunboats. Then three of those went from Cowes Harbour, and the Lotus went from Ryde Pierhead. So off we muster down to Cowes in the harbour, on the dockside there. That's good, boxes of live ammunition here. Here we're filling up. Spent the afternoon priming grenades, loading our magazines, getting everything, all the demolition squad, they were getting all their bits and pieces ready. And it became quite apparent then that something serious was afoot. We embarked about 6 o'clock, 1800 hours, and once we were on board, we got an initial briefing. I should go back to say the original operation in June, July. That was to have been the parachute regiment were to have been the principal forces there. There was to be preceded by a very heavy aerial bombardment, but they were all changed, all altered because of collateral damage to the French population and all that sort of thing. However, that lot was cancelled. Come back to the Operation Jubilee. We embarked, all our ammunition, everything on board these 3 chasseurs, and got an initial briefing then. Even though we weren't told where it was, but we were going to a German-held French port. And then, what did we cast off from there? About 2000, I think it was. And the fleet gathered out in the Solent. And then we got a final briefing. And Dieppe was the target. Well, you've all had some experiences here, and you know, can you imagine the military brains that thought up the idea of doing a frontal assault on an enemy-held port without aerial cover. Well, aerial cover fighting, but no heavy guns. The heaviest were the 4-inch guns on the 3 destroyers, no, 6 destroyers, weren't there? But they thought it'd be a good idea to see if it could work. However, within the overall Operation Jubilee, there were 2 Army Commandos, and there was 3 or 4 Army Commando and the Royal Marine Commando. Now, that was a sort of separate operation within the overall Canadian, first Canadian Div, which did the main landings. And the objective of the 2, 3 and 4 Commando, their objectives were to put out the heavy gun batteries to the east and west of Dieppe. Now, unfortunately, number 3 were going in about 03:30. One of those chances that no planning on earth can foresee. A small little coastal convoy was coming up there, escorted by a couple of E-boats, and poor old number 3's landing craft were right in the midst of it. Oh, and a big gunfight went on, because the whole coastline's up in arms then, isn't it? We didn't stand a chance in hell. All element of surprise was gone. Number 4, oh lucky Lovett. Number 4, they got in, they knocked out their, I think it was the Herman Goring battery to the west, and they were back in New Haven by midday. But that's another story. The role of the Royal Marine Commando was to get into the outer and inner harbours. Lotus was to crash the boom across the harbour, specially reinforced bows. So, of course, by this time, the whole coastline was up in arms, and the chasseurs, we were circling around outside the harbour. The Lotus was coming round and make a dash to crash the boom. And as you could almost see the thing reeling back under the weight of fire thrown at it. 3 attempts she had at going round, and quite apparent that no way was it going to be able to crash the boom. Had they done that, then the Lotus would have carried on down into the inner harbour, where there was some big merchant shipping, and played havoc with them. And with the chasseurs, our job was to go to the outer harbour, where there was some of the old German troop barges that they'd got ready for invasion. And we were each chasseur would take 3 of these blooming great big barges in tow back across the channel to Portsmouth. Can't you imagine it? It would have been a 2-knot convoy. Unbelievable. My particular role, I had to ride gunshot with a section. I had to ride gunshot on a guy, one of my mates actually, who was going to blow the safe in the naval headquarters. We knew exactly which building, which floor, which room, and which corner of the room, and what type of safe it was. But I couldn't get near it. So the whole operation had to, as you all know, plans are changed on the hoof, aren't they, from the word go. Word had come through, the Canadians were going in on either side, and word had come through that Canadians had broken through the beach defences on White Beach. So the Royal Marine Commando was transferred from the chasseurs and the Lotus to landing craft to go in and land on White Beach to support the supposed breakthrough, and then go through. But when you got there, it's crazy. It was just no way. The beach was a 15 to 20 degree slope and all shingle. Anyway, tanks were expected to go through that. And we're talking of 1942. Tanks weren't the sophisticated stuff that came along in 44 but later on. And they couldn't, they were all bogged down. The Germans, the German forces up there behind there, it was just a turkey shoot for them. They were having a wonderful day. Yeah, it says we'll get that lot there. You couldn't touch them. We did get ashore, but it was obvious. Apparently, you couldn't. There's nothing on earth you could possibly do. Putting it as mildly as possible, the whole shore was covered with burnt-out tanks, bodies, body parts, bits of bodies, blokes wounded, blokes hiding, getting every cover they could. Hey, oh, here we go, another snafu, a right old snafu that was. The CO was coming in, but he could see it was obviously pointless, just absolutely pointless to send any more men in at all. It was just, may as well put them against the wall and shoot them. So he positioned himself on the highest possible site he could get with a pair of white gloves on and semaphored to the Major Houghton, the 2IC. He was on the beach to signal the withdrawal. Of course, he set himself up there, a perfect target, not only up there, but all his white gloves and that. And off went Colonel Phillips. He was gone, the adjutant, and quite a few of the 3 or 4 of the officers there. But they did get the withdrawal, as much as you guys know, you've seen it before. It's unbelievable, the chaos there. There's this, we did, 400 yards of the beach is nothing but a mass of burnt out vehicles, burnt out bodies, burnt out blokes floating around and crying for help. And overhead there's the Messerschmitts and the ME1s coming burning over. And still the gun battery, number 3 gun battery, hadn't been put out. That was still shelling us there. But the landing craft I was in, we got about a couple of 100 yards off the beach, and whoosh, got it in the motor. Up it went the sheet of flame. Over the side, everybody for himself. And did the worst possible thing a man in action can do. Divested ourselves of all our equipment. Had we not done so, we would have just sunk to the bottom of that, but we knew we got to swim ahead. So some of the guys went back to the beach. Oh, you silly. At this time, if you know anything, Hitler had issued a general command that special service troops, paras, commandos, any special, were to be shot on sight, no prisoners, no question, shot on sight. So fortunately they were, despite what we say about the Nazis and the like, there were some decent Germans in the armies and in the Navy, in the Air Force, but few and far between, I'm afraid. However, you say, no, you silly buggers, you go back to the beach, you'll get shot or you'll end up in the cage. But no, they went back. I think about 70 of them ended up in the camp, I think. We were saying, oh, Portsmouth is that way, come on. It was a lovely day, beautiful sunny day, and the channel, one of those rare occasions, the channel was like a sheet of glass. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, Portsmouth is that way. We did know, in the brief, we did know that there will be 2 Hunt-class destroyers on survivor patrol until last light. Well, I was, I can see it now, Willie McKnight. He must have been old, he was 30. He was an old man compared to us lads. I can't swim, I can't swim. Come on, Willie, you silly old bugger, of course you can. I can't swim. in all the Detroit runs, there was a lot of, there was 2 or 3 scaling ladders, bamboo scaling ladders. Got one of those, empty smoke float, one under each end, lashed them on, and stuck Willie on it, and said, "Go on, that's the way to Portsmouth." Now, you see my mate now, Dick McCoggin, "We'll get you back there, Willie. If we do, then you owe me a quid." Willie did get back, and Mac did get his quid. But that's a story inside a story. Chaps were getting picked up by all sorts of things. But the little group I was with, there were about 6 of us. And we set out, we were what, 19? Was I? I wasn't 19. No, I wasn't quite 19. But we were super fit, no question about it. We were super fit fellas. And at the time, your adrenaline is pumping away. Oh, you're absolutely pumped high with adrenaline. You're invincible. Nothing can touch you. You're absolutely invincible. Portsmouth is that way? We're going to Portsmouth. And we swam about half an hour. Then we tread water, sort of then massage each other's shoulders and that for about 10 minutes. Then another half an hour. And lapsed time, I think, was about 3.5 hours. And we suddenly saw the Brock was HMS Brock, one of the survivor patrols. And then they came over, scaling ladder, scaling down the side, up we got. So that's good, here we are, home and dry now. But no, they wouldn't, we wanted to get up and work, relieve them on the Orlicans and the guns, but they bugged us down in the mess deck, get out of the way. About half an hour after we got up, a big cheer went up. I see him now. Quartermaster Sergeant Bennett, Wiggy Bennett. Being the quartermaster, he had every bit of his equipment. Every bit of his equipment on there. He was responsible for the equipment, wasn't he? Incidentally, that was the only action in which we, as the Royal Marine Commando, wore steel helmets. They were absolutely useless bloody things. They just got in the way. We never wore steel helmets after that. But Wiggy came, he got everything. His brain gun, his Tommy gun he had. And a big cheer went up when he come over the side. Wiggy Bennett. But they kept us down, and we thought that was it. But no, up and down. By this time, what are we now? We're probably about 1600, 1630, 1700, something like that. And pretty well everything else had cleared. There's nothing else for the Krauts to shoot at, except these 2, the Brocklesby. I forget the other one now. They're the only 2 targets they got, so they got pretty well hammered all the time. And lost one engine, got stuck on a sandbar, got off that, lost another. Anyway, about 1800, 1900, set sail for Pompey. Good. But that took us 6 hours because at one stage she lost both engines. Oh, God help us. We got that's right, we got back to Pompey around about midnight. Went ashore there. By this time we were all sorts of, we looked like a load of pirates because most of our equipment, most of our uniforms have been oil soaked or greased, and we old Matlow's trousers, Matlow's jumpers and bits and pieces. Our first reception point was HMS Victory, Nelson's old flagship. That was the first checkpoint. And then for that we were taken by lorries up to a naval camp at Havant. Yeah, I thought it was Havant. And somehow or other I got separated from my little lot and ended up in the Canadian checkpoint. And the first thing that happened, the enamel mug of rum was stuck in my hands. Here, Royal, drink that. However, caught up with me mates eventually. Crashed down for the night. Next morning, a little shake. There's an old chiefy. Hey, all Royal, here's a towel, here's the heads are down there. When the old chiefy comes down and gives a Royal a shake, that's right, isn't it? You know. Where is he? Frank. You know, chiefies don't do things like that, do they? But, I'll go back to what's happened, but this is just a general outline of how it progressed. And then we've got to get back to the island. Each man, in those days, each man was responsible for getting back to his particular unit, his billet. And the commander was based Sandown, Shetland and Ventnor. And whatever you've been on, wherever you've been, it was your responsibility to get back to your particular unit. We lived in civvy billets. We lived to the local troops. They hated our guts. We were living in civvy billets, and we're getting 6 shillings and 8pence a day on top of our wages for our living allowance. That's another story. By this time, this is on the morning of the 20th, news was out. And if you've seen any newspapers at that time, you've got the impression that it was a wonderful victory for the Allied forces. God help us, the propaganda machine really swings into action. I suppose it's just as well, otherwise the poor old Joe public wouldn't want to know what really happened. But we did get back eventually to the island. In those days it took about an hour and a half for the ferry to go from Pompey across to Ryde because of the minefields and all the sort of swept areas and that sort of thing. But fortunately, once it cast off from Pompey, the bar was open, wasn't it? And word was out by this time, and this old ragtag mob of daps in all sorts of oh! You could have floated across on the beer and the whiskey was flung at you by the civvies who were on board. And we got to ride, pick up the old steam engines steam trains were all over the island then. We got to Sandown, going down just 26th Avenue Road. And there at the door is Auntie, our landlady, Auntie, and her sister. Story had got round that me and my mates had been shot to hell, and I was last seen, or my body was last seen floating in the harbour at Dieppe with both me head or my legs or something blown off.
You must have been a bad swimmer.
That was the homecoming, that was it. And we had to take count of the cost then. 340 was the complement of the Royal Marine Commando. We lost 27 killed, 75 wounded, about just under 30% casualties with dead, wounded and POWs. Now, anybody you know that's a hell of a casualty rate, isn't it? In any action, 30%, bloody hell. Can't go very many actions with that. However, that's another story. At the time, the Royal Marine Commander was still working on the old infantry battalion style of companies, whereas the commanders were adopted the troop handle. We were obviously going to be working arm in arm with the Army Commander, the Special Service Brigade. So our formation was altered to comply with them to troops as opposed to companies. Ex-company suddenly became Y Troop. I'm digressing terribly here. I'm not keeping anything coherent at all, am I? So if I go back to off the beach, when we got off the beach, well, bloody hell, sorry, still raging very, very fiercely. And before we got in, when we were circling around outside waiting for the Lotus to crash the boom, we were under heavy aerial attack all the time. But hey, poor old RAF, they got a bashing there, didn't they? I've got some figures here as to. Pity I couldn't get them. It's not much, you know, we can't see this sort of thing. Would have been nice to have had a pictorial. Next time we'll do it. Yeah. But we've got here. Of the, what's it there? For nearly 5,000 Canadians, weren't there?
4,963 Canadian troops sailed from the UK to Dieppe. Only 2,210 returned.
Yeah.
Total fatal casualties numbered 907. 1,944 were taken prisoners of war. 370 Royal Marines of A Company sailed to Dieppe. 75 failed to muster on return to their base on the Isle of Wight. Casualties, including prisoner of war, amounted to 24 dead and 76 wounded. The Royal Navy lost 75 killed, Royal Air Force 69 killed.
Yeah. It was reckoned that day was the biggest aerial combat of World War II. And you know, we were all saying, well, where's the bloody RAF? But of course they were inland trying to stop the Luftwaffe getting through to the coast. That's where the poor old RAF were. They were getting shot from here on to breakfast time. I nearly said something naughty then. But you see that you're only concerned with your own. It's sort of tunnel vision, really. You're not really aware of what's going on. You know something's happening around you. I know whilst we were circling around, waiting for the boom to be crashed, we were under heavy bombardment, air, and of course dodging in and out the fleet. There's these bloody German E-boats were here, there, and everywhere. You couldn't keep track of them. In fact, a submarine came up. A German U-boat popped up somewhere in the midst of the lot. And meanwhile, the first Canadian div, it was pathetic. They were only there because the Canadians had been in the UK since 1940. And by this time, 42, they were becoming a bit of a pain in the neck. I mean, there's a whole Canadian army, and all young fellas, all fit as fighting cocks. No fighting to do, so they fought amongst themselves, they fought with us, and they fought with the civilians. And the Canadian government, it was their wish, their requirement that the Canadian division was the main land forces for Dieppe. So originally it was to have been the Paras. Your ancestors would have been there, Alan, but that was cancelled, and they really took. Been back there since, and gone round to some of the beaches that the Canadians were to land. Puys was one. Oh golly gosh, 600 of them landed there, and I think 60 odd got away. But the beach was probably as wide as this room, and then straight up, bloody great cliffs up there like that. Of course, they said that the German defences, they just said it was a turkey shoot for them. It was good target practice, I think. And another thing, intelligence didn't tell us. They didn't tell us that, was it the Hermann Göring Panzer, one of the Panzer divisions was lying back in Rouen for R&R. And we didn't know this, did we? Of course, no sooner the landing started than they were activated, and they were there supporting. The whole thing was a complete snafu. And Mountbatten had the audacity to say, yes, we did have heavy casualties, but we learned a lot of lessons for D-Day. And our reaction was, bugger you and your lessons, mate. Didn't do us any good. But I'm wandering hopelessly. But we did do a lot. We did pick up a lot of information from that. And one was that you couldn't expect tracked vehicles to go up a shingle beach with an angle of 15 degrees. You couldn't expect that. I suppose from that you got all these Hobart's wonders that were produced for the D-Day landing. You know, all these wonderful machines they had for laying ditches and all that sort of thing. But it's all very well saying we learned a lot of lessons, but it comes very hard to
High price.
to have to be the pupils who learn those lessons.
Definitely.
Now it was well, you know, the men in suits, they sit in their eagle nest areas up in Whitehall, and what can we do? What can we do? At that time, of course, 42 initial ideas for D-Day were being set, weren't they? And I suppose from that, it became quite obvious, although you didn't need to do that attack to know that it was virtually impossible to take an enemy-held port by frontal assault unless you got heavy aerial bombardment to precede it. But it did pass on a lot of lessons, and from that, I suppose the Mulberry Harbours developed, didn't they? That you couldn't, if you couldn't take an enemy port, then take your own port with you, and that's where Mulberry developed from that. But going back to the actual Dieppe itself, there were some wonderful things happened there. There was one. I've been back there many times since, with the association with the Royal 40 Commander, the Wartime 40 Commander Association. Our last time was last year, the 70th, and unbelievable. The Dieppe was. They turn out in their thousands. Last year, see, the 70th. Only about 5 or 10% of the people there could have been alive at the time. It was all young people. The Canadians are worshipped, and the Canadians and the 3 and 4 and the Royal Marine Commanders, they're worshipped by the Dieppois. And you can't put a foot wrong in Dieppe. It's a wonderful feeling. We've got. Am I talking too much?
No, you're doing all right.
I could go on for hours about it. There's so many little incidents in between. You know, funny little things happen. There was that incident of poor William McKnight. Can he swim? Or can he swim? And stick him on a scaling ladder. And how on earth he got back? I don't know. He couldn't have paddled back. He must have been picked up. But guys were being picked up by all sorts of some of the lucky blokes. They were picked up by a Royal Marine rocket ship and rocket barge, and they got some opportunity to do some firing. But what I think I said enough there. I don't know if anybody can ask me anything. It's a very incoherent, very disjointed sort of story, I'm afraid. But it was a disjointed day, very much so. But on last year, on the 70th anniversary, there were only 5 of us there from the original, from the Royal Marine Command, only 5 of us who were actually at Dieppe. And there were a couple of guys from number 3 and 2 from number 4. And the town of Dieppe gave us a commemorative medallion, which, if you like,
Oh, so if you don't want me to read that, it's in French.
well, it's just.
Village of Dieppe, 70th anniversary of the operation of Jubilee on the 19th of August 1942.
The town of Dieppe, yeah.
Yes.
And there's
the
the maple leaf with the dove of peace coming from it, which is the carrying the olive branch, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely.
To pass it round them. You'll only find a maximum 10 of those in the UK. So that's something to be proud of, isn't it?
Yeah, that is lovely. And we'll pass this round, and we have a little surprise for you. Step forward, Nadia. And thank you for that today. I mean, especially for those of us that obviously are quite young, me. I mean, we haven't heard a lot of these things, and I know that a lot of people don't like to talk about their war experience, and they feel, you know, they're with other people here that have their own war experiences, but yours is personal view, and it's, I know the people at the back and everything, you know, I find that gives me shivers really, to actually even think, you know, you saying, I mean, I saw Private Ryan, but to actually think you actually lived that is horrific, and that actually brings it to life. So I think it's for us. I think it is really good. You're right, Frank. So thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you.
And now, so I will thank you very much.
No. Formidable.
Hope you did it right.
Yeah.
I'm delighted to present to you your finished artwork, framed by Matt, who's here today.
Is Matt here?
Yes, he's just here
Where
to the
are
left
you, old
taking lots
rascal?
of photos.
Where are you, Matt?
You'll be
Over here,
up in a
Alan.
minute.
Over here.
Hello.
And this is something that Alan did in Arts and Crafts. He's done the mosaic, and this is the
I've
cat
just
badge
hold it up for everyone
for
to
the
see,
Royal
Alan.
Marine Commandos. And he's actually done that, and we've kept it from him today to just show him. So this is the first time he's seen the finished
Finished
article
yeah.
and framed.
And
So
it was-
Alan's done this on his very many visits. He's done that on all the visits that he's been here. So we're just
Since
showing
May.
it since May.
Yeah.
So that's for him today. So,
Fantastical.
but, yeah.
It's
So
been
it's
very
really good.
hard to hide it from
Yeah,
Alan.
we've hidden it all week.
And Alan's kindly presented this back to the building as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I just got a little thank you for you, Alan. It's another labour of love that a member
We've got the
has
coin
made.
Oh.
A little teddy with wearing a poppy.
Hello, mate.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know where's Steve's not here. Is one
No,
where-
Steve's gone down to London for the...
Oh, yes, right, yeah. Has Dawn done the...
All the lettering is on.
yeah,
so
no, has she done the explanation?
Well, we're undecided as to exactly where we want it to go, but if you've got any preference, let us know. But we want it to go somewhere where everyone's going to
Dawn
see.
was doing an explanation.
We've got a little
Why we got the
explanation.
globe, where the laurel wreath came from, and where the
Yeah.
she's preparing that, isn't she?
Yeah,
But that-
absolutely.
that'd be good legend alongside this.
Yeah.
But no, it's up to Steve wherever. But Matt, where are you, you rascal?
Over here, Alan.
Hey,
He's
Over
there.
here.
He'll come up in a minute. But thank you to everybody
Matt did the
before coming.
framing, and Matt's a younger member of 40 Commando. You were the Falklands era, weren't you, Matt?
Aye. Well
They,
done,
did,
yes.
they didn't get better looking though.
No, you're
No, they
quite
did
right.
get
You're
that
quite
looking.
right.